The phrase World War III, a term that once seemed relegated to the history books or science fiction, conjures images of global catastrophe, a scenario so devastating that its mere mention sends shivers down our spines. It speaks to the potential unraveling of civilization as we know it, conflict on a scale beyond anything seen in the last century, a war that would dwarf even the immense scale and destruction of World War II. In today's interconnected world, where economies and societies are deeply intertwined, a major war between great powers would send shockwaves everywhere, triggering a cascade of consequences that would affect every corner of the globe, disrupting economies, crippling international trade, and potentially leading to widespread economic collapse, creating refugees on an unprecedented scale as millions are forced to flee their homes in search of safety, and threatening the global order, undermining the institutions and agreements that have maintained a fragile peace for decades. July 12, 2025, a hypothetical date, but one that serves as a stark reminder that the threat of large-scale conflict is ever present. Tensions are higher than at any time since the Cold War, a period defined by ideological division and the constant threat of nuclear annihilation. With the war in Ukraine, a brutal and ongoing conflict that has shattered the peace in Europe and reignited old rivalries. Disputes over Taiwan, an island nation that China claims as its own, and a potential flashpoint for a major military confrontation. And Middle East volatility all colliding, creating a perfect storm of instability and uncertainty. These aren't isolated crises, they are interconnected and mutually reinforcing. They're flashpoints where the interests of the US, China, and Russia directly clash, creating a dangerous environment of mistrust and competition. The rise of nationalism and weakened international institutions have further exacerbated these tensions, have eroded the guardrails that once kept great power competition in check, increasing the risk of miscalculation and escalation. This video will examine the key flashpoints, providing a comprehensive overview of the most dangerous areas in the world. Compare today's risks to those before the world wars, drawing parallels and highlighting the unique challenges of our time, and explore what makes our era unique, from the rise of cyber warfare to the proliferation of advanced technologies. We'll look at military capabilities, assessing the strengths and weaknesses of the major powers, political motivations, understanding the underlying drivers of conflict and competition, and the powerful deterrent of nuclear weapons, examining the role they play in maintaining or undermining global stability. The real question, what makes a world war more or less likely, and what can be done to steer us toward peace? What steps can be taken to de-escalate tensions, promote diplomacy, and prevent the unthinkable? Ukraine stands as the world's most dangerous flashpoint, a region teetering on the edge of wider conflict. The situation is incredibly precarious. It's become a grinding war of attrition, a brutal and protracted struggle that has unfortunately morphed into a proxy conflict between Russia and the West, with both sides deeply entrenched. The risk of direct confrontation is ever present, a looming threat that hangs heavy over the region as military posturing continues. We see hardened rhetoric and a shrinking space for compromise, making de-escalation increasingly difficult and raising the stakes for all involved. Diplomatic solutions seem further and further away. Shifting our focus to the Indo-Pacific, Taiwan emerges as a second tinderbox, a potential flashpoint with far-reaching consequences. China's escalating military pressure, combined with unwavering US support for Taiwan, creates a dangerous equation. This has created a situation where a miscalculation, a simple error in judgment, could inadvertently spark a devastating US-China war. The Middle East, as always, remains incredibly volatile, a region plagued by long-standing conflicts and simmering tensions. The shadow war between Iran and Israel is intensifying, escalating the risk of a broader regional conflagration. Adding to the complexity, US forces are in close proximity to Iranian proxies, increasing the potential for direct engagement and misinterpretations. These flashpoints are not isolated incidents. They are interconnected, forming a web of global instability. Russia, China, and Iran are increasingly coordinating their actions, presenting a united front. Their aim is to challenge the US-led order, to reshape the global landscape in their favor. A crisis in one region could easily trigger a domino effect worldwide, destabilizing the entire international system. The world's major powers are locked in a complex, multidimensional chess game, a strategic competition with incredibly high stakes. In this tense environment, a single spark, a seemingly minor incident, could ignite a much larger fire with potentially catastrophic consequences for the entire world. Today's world echoes the pre-World War eras: rising nationalism, great power rivalry, and rigid alliances. NATO and the Russia-China partnership mirror the old alliance systems that once turned regional crises into global wars. Revisionist powers, Russia in Europe, China in Asia, challenge the existing order, much like Germany did in the 1930s. Yet there are crucial differences. Nuclear weapons and deep economic interdependence act as powerful deterrents, making all-out war far more costly. Global supply chains and financial ties mean that war would devastate all sides. International institutions, though strained, offer forums for dialogue and crisis management that didn't exist before the world wars. The challenge: these institutions are now being undermined by the very rivalries they were designed to manage. Our era is both more dangerous and more resilient than the past. That nuclear weapons are the defining difference between now and the pre-World War eras. Mutually assured destruction has prevented direct war between nuclear powers for over 75 years. But deterrence is under strain. Arms control treaties are collapsing, China is expanding its arsenal, and new technologies like hypersonic missiles and cyber warfare threaten stability. Doctrines envisioning limited nuclear use lower the threshold for catastrophe. The war in Ukraine and nuclear threats from Russia have brought these dangers to the forefront. The nuclear balance is fragile, requiring constant management and renewed commitment to arms control to prevent disaster. Alliances can serve as a powerful deterrent to war, projecting strength and solidarity, but they also carry the inherent risk of escalating conflicts, drawing nations into disputes that might otherwise remain localized. NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, remains the world's strongest and most cohesive military alliance, a cornerstone of transatlantic security. Its Article 5 commitment, the principle of collective defense, has been instrumental in deterring potential attacks for decades, assuring member states that an attack on one is an attack on all. The recent addition of Finland and Sweden, two historically neutral Nordic countries, has significantly strengthened NATO's northern flank, enhancing its overall defensive capabilities and strategic reach. However, Russia views NATO expansion as a direct threat to its own security interests, perceiving it as an encroachment upon its sphere of influence. This perception fuels a dangerous security dilemma, where actions taken to enhance one's own security are interpreted as hostile by others, leading to a spiral of escalating tensions. Defensive moves by one side, such as troop deployments or military exercises, are often seen as acts of aggression or provocation by the other side, further exacerbating mistrust and animosity. This dynamic increases mistrust and significantly elevates the risk of miscalculation and unintended escalation, potentially leading to open conflict. Meanwhile, China and Russia have been actively deepening their strategic partnership, forging closer ties in the political, economic, and military spheres. This developing partnership is widely seen as forming a loose bloc, aimed at countering US influence and challenging the existing international order. Iran and North Korea, often viewed as rogue states, increasingly align themselves with this emerging axis, finding common ground in their opposition to Western policies. Simultaneously, many countries in the global south are hesitant to take sides in this growing geopolitical competition, strategically seeking to maximize their own economic and political interests by engaging with all major powers. The world today is demonstrably less rigidly divided than it was during the Cold War era, when a clear bipolar structure dominated international relations. However, this increased fluidity and multipolarity creates new arenas for proxy competition, where major powers support opposing sides in regional conflicts. The actions and alignments of middle powers and non-aligned states introduce a significant degree of unpredictability and complexity to the already intricate global landscape. In this environment, alliances today function as both a shield, providing security and collective defense, and a potential source of tension, exacerbating existing rivalries. The central challenge lies in effectively managing these complex and often volatile rivalries without allowing them to spiral out of control and descend into open warfare. Diplomacy is the first line of defense against global war. Despite tensions, high-level talks between the US, China, and Russia continue, helping manage misperceptions and clarify red lines. Mediators like Turkey and China have facilitated limited agreements in Ukraine, while US-China communication aims to avoid miscalculation over Taiwan. International organizations, though often paralyzed, still provide platforms for dialogue and crisis management. Economic tools, sanctions, incentives, and trade agreements shape the strategic environment, raising the cost of aggression. Every diplomatic channel kept open is a step away from disaster. Experts and leaders warn that the guardrails preventing war are weaker than in decades. They highlight the collapse of arms control, rising nationalism, and the speed of misinformation as key risks. Official speeches balance deterrence with calls for dialogue, signaling that war is neither inevitable nor desired. Think tanks and scholars model scenarios, advise governments, and stress the catastrophic costs of major war. The consensus, a third world war, is a real risk, but not inevitable. The main danger is not a deliberate war, but an unintended escalation from a regional crisis. The focus must be on managing flashpoints and keeping communication open to prevent catastrophe. Avoiding global conflict requires active use of de-escalation tools. Revitalizing arms control is urgent. New frameworks must include China and other nuclear states, and address emerging threats like cyber and space. Strengthening international law and institutions is critical for mediation and crisis resolution. Economic and cultural interdependence raises the cost of war and fosters mutual understanding. People-to-people connections and soft power build resilience against conflict. Persistent multi-level diplomacy, including back channels and unofficial talks, creates off-ramps in crises. Every open channel and honest conversation is a small victory for peace. In 2025, the world stands at a crossroads, haunted by the specter of world war, yet equipped with tools for peace. Nuclear weapons and economic interdependence make all-out war unthinkable, but not impossible. International institutions and diplomacy offer hope, but require renewed commitment. Preventing catastrophe is a collective responsibility. Leaders must pursue dialogue, resist escalation, and manage rivalries wisely. Citizens play a role too, demanding peaceful solutions, supporting peace-building, and resisting divisive narratives. The path to peace is not guaranteed. It must be built every day. Our interconnected world is worth preserving from the ravages of another world war. The choice, war or peace, belongs to all of us.